Good evening, everybody. Aquatic here with a real report. This is probably one of the most important videos that I've made, so please stick around. You guys are going to hear this out. Also, thank you guys so much for the absolutely incredible amount of support lately. I was just 12 days ago, I was thanking everyone for 2,000 views, and we're currently sitting at just over 4,000 views, which is spectacular. I want to give a quick shout out to Xanath, Robert, Mira, Luigi, Greg, Sonic, Christina, Alex, for some of the new subscribers. So welcome to the channel. Hope you guys stick around. Now again, if you guys find anything of value in this video, please consider leaving a like, commenting down below, share it with your friends and family. It really is important. Now, this is all about drought, famines, food shortages, and the oncoming global crisis. So, millions in East Africa face starvation due to drought. Millions of people in East Africa are facing the threat of starvation. That's from the World Health Organization. They said that drought, climate change, rising prices, and the ongoing civil war in northern Ethiopia are all contributing to worsening food insecurity in the region. Now, over 50 million people in East Africa will face acute food insecurity this year. Roughly 7 million children are suffering from malnourishment, and according to the United Nations High Commissioner, hundreds of thousands are leaving their homes in search of food or livelihoods. Now, that's only going to continue to get worse, and it's not just a problem in Africa. Hopping over into Europe, France is losing up to 35% of vegetable crops due to drought. That's from the Association of Producers. Now, France's fruit and vegetable crops have fallen by nearly 35% due to the extreme drought this summer. They said, quote, "We have losses on the yields for the moment." They're estimating that these losses are between 25 and 35%. That's due to the current restrictions on the use of water because of the drought. Now, restrictions on the use of water have been introduced in almost all regions of France amid a record drought in July. Now, stay tuned in the video because we've got US, England, and a bunch of other places we're going to cover in just a second. Now, that was just France. Two large wildfires broke out that burned just shy of 50,000 acres of forest. Hopping across the pond to the US, Western mega drought, hear this guys, worst in 1,200 years, scientists warn. 1,200 year record. Dried up, Texas cattle industry faces existential crisis from historic drought. And specifics, new AFBF survey shows droughts increasing toll on farmers and ranchers, with 60% of American West, Southwest, and Central Plains categorized as D3, which is severe drought or higher. Now, the 17 states, including and north of Texas, up along the Central Plains to North Dakota and west to California, are vital to the U.S. agricultural sector, supporting nearly half of the nation's 364 billion production by value. It's very rare that I end up highlighting an entire paragraph, but this information is staggering. Now I'm going to read off these percents. This includes 74% of beef cattle, responsible in total for 18% of the U.S. agricultural production by value, 50% of dairy production, 11% of U.S. agricultural production, over 80% of wheat production, 70% of vegetable, fruit, and tree nut production, and production of these commodities are at risk, along with the stability of farms, ranches, and local economies reliant on crops, livestock, and downstream products and services for income. That is absolutely staggering. Here's the chart here. Again, just look at those percents. Up to 80% of certain products, wheat and cattle. Things are going to get ugly. Ranchers are selling off their cattle in unprecedented numbers due to the drought, and that has enormous implications for 2023 and beyond. Thanks to the horrific drought, which is absolutely devastating ranching in the Southwest, ranchers are now in panic mode, and I can confirm this as my family has a lot of cattle. They're selling off their cattle at an unprecedented rate, and some are choosing to sell off their entire herds because they feel like they don't have any other option. Now, brace for even higher beef prices as Texas cattle industry faces historic drought crisis. This article is just from 2 days ago. Ranchers across Texas continue to panic sell cattle herds Now, keep in mind this article, they were panic selling end of July. This article, 2 days ago. So this problem is only getting worse and worse with every passing week. Now, again, ranchers across Texas continue to panic sell herds as the worst mega drought in over 1,000 years makes it too expensive to sustain operations. America's cattle heartland has seen pastures turn to dust, costs for feed, fertilizer, and diesel skyrocket. That's threatening the entire industry that is essential to the nation's beef supply. Now, the Hill said the devastating drought and higher cattle operations costs would result in higher beef prices for at least the next 2 years. Ranchers are liquidating herds at auction because of the lack of water and soaring costs. Cattle are dying because of the heat and the lack of water. Here's where it gets worse. Increased cattle liquidations at auctions due to worsening drought is nothing like they've seen in 15 years. And they pointed out that farmers are selling off their breeding stock. This is the big takeaway here, which they rely on to produce next generation of cows, because you've obviously got your cattle, you breed them, typically sell the offspring, and then you keep those for a decade or more. USDA's latest cattle report found herds are down 2.4% nationwide, which I actually covered in one of my other videos, I believe last week. A decrease of 750,000 cows and a decline of 2 million since the nation's herd peaked in 2018. So it's been on the decline for 4 years. Here, Oklahoma ranchers are predicting beef to rise to $50 per pound. So the problem isn't just Texas, isn't just America, because here we're getting into England. Mass crop failures expected in England as farmers demand hosepipe bans. Leaked documents predict crop failure rates up to 50% as water companies resist calls to prioritize food production. You could say it is systematically intentional. Experts have warned of widespread crop failures across England, the drought being declared across most of the country already. The Environmental Agency classified 8 of the 14 areas of England as being in a drought. Half, here's where we get into the numbers. You guys already saw the staggering numbers out of France, 35, 50%, up to 70% of the cattle in the United States, 80% of the wheat. Here in England, 50% of the potato crop is expected to fail as it cannot be irrigated. What was that in history? The Irish potato famine. Even crops that are usually drought tolerant, such as maize, are failing. The group was told irrigation options are diminishing with reservoirs being emptied fast, and losses of 10 to 50% are expected for crops including carrots, onions, sugar beet, apples, and hops. Milk production is also down nationally because of a lack of food for cows, and wildfires are putting large areas of farmland at risk. Farmers are deciding whether to drill crops for next year, and there are concerns that many will decide not to, with dire consequences for the 2023 harvest and beyond. Cattle and other livestock are expected to be slaughtered early at lower weights because it is likely farmers will run out of feed for them in the winter. One of the driest areas in East Anglia, which is also home to much of England's farming, including more than 2/3 of its sugar beet crop and a third of its potato crop. But I guess you guys can eat the bugs. There will be very low availability of vegetables if they don't do something very, very fast. Here, back into the US, higher income earners visiting food banks and shop at Walmart as food inflation rises. This is also something I covered, but this is a new article on it as well. Food banks and thrift stores, bringing more attention to them across the country, are seeing surging demand amid historic inflation. Again, consumer prices soared at 9.1% in June, with actual inflation being much, much higher. Down here, some staggering numbers from the food banks. Erin explained that her food bank was serving 130,000 to 150,000 people per month before COVID, and is now serving over 200,000 people each month on average. Olson added that rising inflation has also made it more difficult for the food banks to acquire basics like milk and eggs, which, along with rising fuel costs, has created the perfect storm. Families are expected to spend $864 on school supplies this year, which marks a 24% increase from 2019. And I've also seen a lot of issues that they're not certain families can either, one, afford or to get the free meals for kids at schools, which is absolutely tragic. Now, additionally, the National Retail Federation says that about 1/3 or 38% of consumers are cutting back on their overall spending. 77%. I highlight this just because this number is incredible. 77% of Americans are worried about being able to afford back to school expenses for their kids. And that brings us into this. I'll play the clip. It's only 10 seconds.
Retail numbers show inflation is rippling into every corner of American life, with some people skipping meals because they simply can't afford it. Prices may be down at the gas pump, but prices overall, especially for food, have increased by 8% more than they were last year.
Try 8% a month. Again, that's every country, from every product, from food, from wheat, milk, eggs, vegetables, you name it. From the United States to Europe to Africa, this is a global issue, and it's only getting worse. Wrapping up this video, I wanted to touch base on the fact half of U.S. companies are gearing up for layoffs. Surveys suggest this is something that I've been continuing coverage of, so definitely hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of that. The poll, 700 executives and board members across the U.S. found 52% of companies have already enacted hiring freezes. 4 out of 10 have rescinded jobs or axed signing bonuses for new hires, and half have started laying people off or are preparing to cut the headcount. Also, in other important news, because everything's tied together, because you obviously need trucks, ships, trains, everything to get things from distributors, warehouses, to the stores, to your cart, to your house. Things don't just magically get from mass farm to the table. Venezuela stops oil shipments to Europe as alternatives to Russian energy dry up. It is looking like it's going to be a very, very bad winter in Europe. They say here it's going to get ugly, and I think that's an understatement. With natural gas imports from Russia cut 80% through Nord Stream 1, and I just want to take a second to appreciate these numbers. We're talking 80%, not only products, but cuts in fuel. That's not sustainable. The EU is going to be scrambling for whatever fuel sources they can find to supply electricity and heating through the coming winter. 2 sources that were originally suggested as alternatives were Iran and Venezuela. Yikes to that. But even if they could, increased Iranian oil and gas exports to the West are highly dependent on the tentative nuclear deal that I've also been covering, which they're saying from Goldman Sachs, the deal is unlikely anytime soon, as deadlines on proposals have not been met, and the Israeli government calls for negotiators to walk away. So again, more energy crisis, fuel shortages, food shortages, crop failures, cattle liquidations, and the global drought that's the worst in 1,200 years. I just wanted to get this video out to you guys as soon as I compiled all these articles. So if you found anything of value in here, please, like I said before, leave a like, comment down below, and share with everybody. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Try and prepare, try and stock up, buy extra cans of food, buy things that are non-perishable, put rice in buckets, pasta in buckets. You guys can store these things for decades. You really need to prepare. Have a good night.